thing that, and it's really the one thing that is undisputed and hasn't really been talked about a lot, but these windmills are killing machines. They've killed wildlife, they've affected things in the wildlife aspect, and they bother people that live close by. That's undisputed. It's been testified to. They're also operating at 30% efficiency. I think that if we gave 30% of our effort in our jobs, we wouldn't have a job very long. And that also, to me, indicates that this is not the place for this project. There are surely other places where this project can be better suited to send the energy somewhere else, which this project is going to do. It's not even going to benefit the people that are in the immediate area. So this project really doesn't even belong here. I believe it's the responsibility of either the applicant or the McLean County government to properly notify the citizens, and I mean all of the citizens, of these proceedings. That's something that I think is probably the most impactful of what's been happening with this proceedings. I've even had people 2 days ago tell me that this is the first time they've heard of it. And it's ridiculous that we can't get some kind of a notice. Like I indicated in my testimony, I deliver mail. They have box holders. And if done by a permit, nonprofit permit or whatever, it goes to every single household, whether you rent, whether you own. If there's a delivery address, everybody gets it. I'm just suggesting that that's one possible way. There are many other ways, though, that you can do it as well, and I think that they should be looked into. There was also not enough time allowed in the October 16th, or back in 2016, I'm sorry, let me correct myself. I don't believe that there was ample enough time to allow testimony to do so in that 2016 set of hearings. The hearing that I attended, a fellow, as I indicated, was cut short with his testimony, and part of his testimony had to do with the sound and how the models that were put forth, and actually was to include Dr. Schomer, which would have been able to testify at that time, and we probably wouldn't be sitting here today. Had Dr. Schomer been able to testify, I think he would have enlightened the ZBA, the county board, and how the IPCB standards are improper for windmill projects. He stated that when he was here and actually did testify. And that the 1,500-foot setback would be a mistake and would not adequately protect residents, as he testified here in these proceedings. He helped write the standards in 1968. There were no windmill projects at the time, and it was testified as well. Those standards were not even taken into account. The windmill farms, and I don't even want to call them farms, I farm, and that's not even in the same realm. They don't even take into effect the windmills and what they do to the residents nearby. The pollution standards have to do with just decibels of noise. But there's so much more in the windmills, and everybody understands that from the testimony. And there's so many other things that can affect besides just sound, infrasound, vibration, all the things that are involved. Invenergy has had opportunities to cite studies that show no effects. So they've had the opportunity to prove that this is harmless. It's not going to affect us. You don't have nothing to worry about. That's what they tell us, but they've provided nothing to show us that we're not at harm's risk. My concerns for the communities that are affected, especially Lexington, Chenal, Colfax, Gridley, the first families to move out of communities are the families with children, young children. Lexington can't afford to lose any more children. Money is not going to fix bringing children in. It's the surroundings and the environment. They have a wonderful community. They still have their school. But what's to say 10 years down the road, you have windmills, and then you have less children, then the state comes in and says, you don't have enough. We're gonna make you go to somewhere else with your children. Then you have no school, then you have windmills. It's a double problem. Something that's gonna be paid for later that we really have no idea what's gonna happen. The measurements need to be made from the edge of the blade sweep to the building site property line. Those are the things that are important. If somebody wants to build a shed on their property within the property lines, if it's within the setbacks, according to zoning, you probably won't even be able to build that building because it's going to be too close. Not to the house, it shouldn't be measured. I was a little disappointed when I was asking Mr. Parzak about the boring on the sites and had no idea. So, you know, the lack of information and everything. I believe that the proposals and everything that they have come up with, they do not conform to your criteria for doing so, so I'm asking that you deny the petition or the application.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Kimberly Brucker.
Kimberly Brucker, B-R-U-C-K-E-R, 20662 North, 2900 East Road in Lexington. Again, like everybody's saying, thank you very much for your time. One thing that I've thought about over the last couple days, I would invite any of you all, members, board members, as well as anyone from Invenergy, to come and spend a day, bring your kids, bring your grandkids to my farm on a gorgeous summer day. We ride horses, we ride the four-wheelers, we take a kayak in the river, and we fish. Mark my words, that would probably be one of the best days that your kids would have. At the end of the day, I'd like to think you would enjoy yourself as well. If the windmills do come through, those aren't going to be the days that we remember there. I moved to my farm to raise my kids in that environment, and it does sadden me to think that that may not happen. It may be changed. What I'm asking of all of you on the Zoning Board of Appeals is to stop and consider if you believe that this has been a fair process for those of us who live in the footprints of these windmills in McLean County. Invenergy has had approximately 2 years to plan for this. We were blindsided and scrambled to even wrap our minds around this. It's left us very little time to prepare or to gather our own expert witnesses. After listening to some of the testimonies last Thursday night, especially the gentleman from Carlock, the potential consequences of this frightens me to my core. I'm under the belief that you have been appointed to these positions to protect the citizens of McLean County. Clearly, there are people who are worried about their future on their farms that are counting on you to protect them. I ask that you vote this project down, or at the very least postpone it to allow us more time and research this and prepare the exact same that Invenergy has. Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph Birchie. State your name and address for the record.
Joe Birchie, B-E-R-T-S-C-H-E, 27651 East 2700 North Road, Chenal. Since they brought up the amount of, the depth of the drilling, Horizon came out and did test borings on my farm when they, I think it was 2008 or 9, whatever it was, when they came out, and the project all fell through, so we pulled they insert a plastic pipe down there, and I'm estimating they stuck out of the ground about 4 feet. And I probably pulled about 25 feet of pipe out of the ground. So that's about where it was. And I did that in 2 different places because we had 2 sites on the farm at that time. The other thing I want to talk about is last Thursday, the wife and me, we went down to see the windmills out here on Route 9. I went down to Leroy Lexington Blacktop, crossed over Route 9, and pulled into the first turbine on the west side of the road. And I had a laser rangefinder, and it was 780 feet from where I stood, where I parked the car in the access road. And I listened to it. I could hear a little bit of a whoosh, and I could hear a little bit of a whine up at the top. The wind was blowing at about, the TV said about 10 to 20 mile an hour. It was blowing pretty hard. And I think the windmills at that time were really putting out because we measured them. They were all facing, the wind was coming straight out of the south, and they were all facing straight south into the wind. We counted them doing approximately 15 revolutions a minute by the time, just by your watch. Could have been more, could have been a little less. I left there and went south to the first crossroads, and I found one that was just under 1,500 feet away. And it was blowing, well, it wasn't blowing, it was aimed right to a farmstead to the north of it. Like I said, the wind was blowing right out of the south. I heard the same thing there, only a little less, because I was a lot further away. Where the projected windmill is on our place is, I'm going to be 1,540 feet from the south of my foundation. My property line would be another 135 feet to the north. But I figured that was a pretty good example of where I would be at. I don't have any doubt that I'll probably, a night that it's decent and cool, that I might sit out on my patio and listen to it. Some people say they're noisy, some people say they're not. I'm not going to argue the fact. It is what it is for me. I can't say that for anybody else. My nearest neighbor's over 3/4 of a mile away. I know there'll be one more to the southeast. There'll be one to the southwest, and there'll be some more to the south, 2 more on the Stover ground there. There'll be 3 or 4 to the north. I'm right in the middle of it. I'm as close as anybody is going to be to any of these windmills. Plus I've got the substation, and I'll probably have lights and this and that to put up with. I don't think that'll bother me too much. At least it'll keep vandals out of the south end of the farm. But those are the findings I found. I'm not going to argue with anybody what they'll be, whether good, bad, or ugly, or otherwise, but I think we're passing up a good chance to get some money to our local taxing bodies, and I'll be the first to admit, yes, we will be paid for it. That's just the way it works. We're in America. We accept when somebody wants to deal with you, most of the time we cash the check. So I'd like to thank the board for listening to me and take everything into consideration. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming forward. Theodore Hartke. Dennis Hoff.
My name is Dennis, D-E-N-N-I-S, Hoff, H-O-F-F, 1217 Royal Point Drive, Bloomington, 61704. I keep hearing people say there's no benefit to me. My background is mainly based in energy, and I gotta tell you, that power has to come from somewhere. Every time you flip that switch, you depend on whatever you do. We're just all so used to it, I guess we don't even consider not being without it. But I'm telling you, that power's gotta come from somewhere, and I prefer this over a coal plant, and I certainly prefer this over added nuclear. I just want to say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gail Young.
Respectfully declined.
Dan Deneen.
Dan Deneen, 2219 West Oakland Avenue, Bloomington. I'll try to be very brief. Spent a lot of time on this. First, on the environmental matters. Invenergy is still confused on their role. They said, we agree, we'll go along with this. It's not for them to agree to comply with county regulations. It's for them to accept them or to provide credible evidence. And this needs to be important in future hearings for the ZBA and the county board, that it's not a negotiating game for some people to play around with. Angelo Caparella testified that and pointed out that IDNR, the experts, had 12 plus pages of experts stating their position and the 7 recommendations. Instead, we didn't get that. We didn't get studies. We got a 2.5 page response from someone who didn't even know the standards of credible evidence he was required to meet. Katie Adams stated correctly, why bend the rules? You have the rules, so don't bend them. They've agreed to comply as far as I can understand, except for one variance to place a turbine within 500 feet of one of the creeks. So do not allow any other variances, especially including on turbine 90, if it's within half a mile from the INAI section of Henline Creek, it shouldn't be placed there. The second area, and not connected to Parklands, is the noise. We have someone who is not following proper science. It's been 42 years ago that I took some courses where they tried to teach me about bell curves and standard deviations and all that. I can remember enough from 42 years ago that if you have a 3 decibel variance according to a standard such as ISO, if you take 2 decibels, you're going pretty far the other way. what their expert testified to is pretty much what is the best case scenario for Invenergy, which is to minimize their cost and maximize their profits by placing the wind turbines closer to residences. I would respectfully suggest to this board that you should consider what's the best case scenario for all of the non-participating persons out there. And that would be to move the wind turbines sufficiently far away from the non-participating residents so the noise that they hear, which is subjective of course, but it is annoying, will be minimized. And I do not believe that their noise study, with the bias that he built in against accepted scientific standards, should be adhered to closely, and that they haven't complied with A and B in that regard. I'm still not saying don't tell them no entirely on the project, but they can do some homework and get the turbines further away from the non-participating residents. Thank you.
Thank you. It's about 8 o'clock, so we're gonna take a 10-minute break. We'll put it up on the timer out there.